The FDA has approved the first new Alzheimer's drug in nearly 20 years. That's despite an independent advisory board voting overwhelmingly against it over concerns about a lack of evidence supporting its effectiveness. Aduhelm was tested in people with mild Alzheimer's and is administered intravenously every 4 weeks. The drug is intended to slow disease progression. It is not a cure. In a statement, the Alzheimer's Association called the approval a, quote, victory for people living with Alzheimer's and their families. CBS News senior medical correspondent Dr. Tara Narula joins us. Tara, good morning. This is a very controversial drug.
Morning.
How effective actually is it, do we know, based on these trials?
Well, Anthony, that's really the million-dollar question. You know, this drug is very different from the drugs that currently exist. This drug goes after the fundamental underlying disease process. It's a monoclonal antibody given, as you mentioned, as an infusion that really targets those hallmark amyloid plaques in the brain of individuals with Alzheimer's disease with the hopes of clearing or removing those plaque lesions. Now, the big question is, does that translate into effectiveness? And so that's why there is so much controversy here. You have people on both sides of the equation really looking at the data. And the two trials that were analyzed by the FDA, one showed that there was no clinical effectiveness with this drug. The other one showed a minimal improvement. So you have supporters really saying even a minimal improvement is valuable for this very debilitating and devastating disease. And critics really saying the effectiveness, the evidence is so murky, and is the FDA really lowering the bar here? But what the FDA has done is really interesting. They approve this through a different sort of pathway, an accelerated approval pathway, one that we sometimes see with cancer drugs, where they said, look, we don't have to prove effectiveness. We just have to show that there's a decrease in these amyloid plaques with a reasonable likelihood that that will translate into effectiveness down the road.
Right.
Very interesting.
So, Tara, what exactly does the drug do? When you talk about a reduction in plaque, what could that mean for an Alzheimer's patient?
Well, if we surmise that this really is effective, you can imagine that the 6 million Americans living with Alzheimer's now, which is expected to, by the way, double by 2050, that this will really have an impact for many millions of those suffering with the disease. And according to many advocacy groups like the Alzheimer's Association, the hope is that this really will buy individuals more time with family, time for quality of life, and that even minimal improvements, days or weeks, where you're slowing that cognitive decline, that's really valuable for these individuals. And so this drug was tested in those with mild to moderate cognitive impairment, not really in those with severe disease, but it's been approved for all of those with Alzheimer's disease. And the other hope, Anthony, is that it will spur on investment and research for other drugs like this.
Well, it's been reported, though, Tara, that it's already controversial. What are the side effects?
Well, there are always side effects, and that's why you have to weigh the risks and the benefits. And so in these studies, there were two main things. One was what we call hypersensitivity reactions, almost like allergic reactions. The other, more kind of relevant, was a little bit or often seen brain swelling or microhemorrhages or microbleeds in the brain. Many times these were asymptomatic, but in some cases they did cause confusion, nausea, vomiting, dizziness, falls, change in mental status. And in fact, 40% of the individuals in one of the trials on the high dose had this brain edema or swelling. So that is why for this drug, it is recommended that serial MRIs of the brain be performed during the course of treatment to monitor for these events.
All right, Dr. Tara Narula, thank you so much for being with us this morning, Tara.